Hello and welcome to our Wheel and Anchor webinar about our island hopping in Greece program that we are offering to our members in April and September of 2025. Twice actually in 2025, given the popularity of this program in previous years. We've had some great feedback about it. And before I get into all that, let me give you a brief introduction to Wheel and Anchor, what we're all about for those of you who are perhaps new to us, maybe watching this webinar for the first time. We are a community of travelers from all across Canada. And what brings us together is a like-minded view of how we approach travel. In fact, I was chatting with one of our members a little bit earlier today, and she shared with me how much she appreciated the Canadianness of the trips that we offer, because you can have open conversation, you can have queries and laughs, and there's a commonality to who we are and to the way we travel and explore the world, and we epitomize that at Wheel and Anchor, the people that travel with us, and that is the force that draws us together. I think the identity that we share, and it's embodied in the Traveler's Creed that you may remember when you joined us, whether that was recently or a long time ago, about how we view the world and how we travel the world, and how we connect with people along the way. And in that note, that is part of our ethos and our philosophy is about being well-traveled and well-connected. And our version of well-traveled, and I say this time and time again, is more than just checking off countries or cities on your bucket list. If you're watching this video, this webinar, then you're probably already somebody who has a desire to get out and see as much of the world as possible, and that's absolutely valid. It's just the way we see it. We relate to the places along the way. It's very much at the heart of how we curate and how we construct our trips. And the other aspect that sets us apart is our desire to become connected, not only to the destinations that we visit. I mean, obviously, that's the purpose of travel, is to develop a certain connectedness and understanding with these other cultures and these other peoples and languages and food and all the rest of it, but also to the people that we travel with, because let's face it, it's those shared memories, those experiences that we have along the way, the laughs we share over a glass of wine, that is the part that makes the experience in and of itself rewarding, regardless of where you travel to. So that's a little bit about Wheel and Anchor and what we're all about. All of this possible with an amazing team of people. And by way of introduction, my name is Gordon Dreger. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I curate all of the trips that we offer here. We are not a large company. You can see not everybody, but a lot of our team members are shown here on the picture. These are the people, the professionals who are responsible for putting together these programs that I design and come up with, and then executing and making sure that you can have the best experience possible. The other person that's most important to you as a member of Wheel and Anchor is Paula Sarnik. She's our senior trip specialist, a very seasoned professional in offering travel, and has a great rapport with our members and making sure that she gets what it is that you're after, and what interests you, and make sure that your questions are answered in the hopes that you'll join us on this or one of our many adventures. Today's plan, of course, is all about looking at the islands of Greece, taking you on a little digital tour of where we're headed in spring and fall of next year. And without further ado, I jump into the geographical overview, as I always like to do. Greece, of course, as you know, southern Europe on the Mediterranean, midway in the Mediterranean between east and west, obviously in southern Europe with its warm climate. Great time to go in April and September, because it's warm but not too hot. The weather is searing hot in much of the summertime. And it never really gets all that cold in winter, but we think that April is a little bit outside of the peak season, and September is sort of the end of the high season. So two optimal periods, and I'll explain about the difference of those during the webinar. Our trip begins and ends in Athens, but on the way in, actually, Athens is only the stopover point, because you fly right into Chania, which is the second largest city in Crete, and I'll tell you about that in a second. So we spent the first few days there on the island of Crete, a large island, the largest, of course, in the Greek islands. We'll visit this area that is quite unfamiliar to a lot of Canadian travelers. A lot of people, particularly that do the classic Greek cruises, will be familiar with Heraklion, which we'll also visit for a night. But I think Chania has a certain charm to it that makes it a different and a unique experience to some of the other places we'll visit. We'll stop in Heraklion, and then the rest of our trip from here will be by high-speed ferries that we'll take between the islands. And this is the beauty of this program is that unlike a Greek cruise, which is a very valid way to get a taste of the islands, but here we get to immerse ourselves because we're spending a few nights on different islands. The first of which, after Crete, of course, being Santorini. Santorini is the jewel of the Greek islands, and you can't really visit Greece without stopping in Santorini. We'll be there for a few nights. We then head to Naxos and Paros, which, based on feedback from previous trips, was the favored spot in Greece because it's lesser known than the Santorinis and the Mykonoses and so on of Greece, and has a lot of authentic charm, beautiful beaches. It's in amongst the little archipelago in and of itself, and we'll be visiting Paros during our stay in Naxos. Syros as well, here in the Cyclades, part of the Greek islands, another favorite spot because it's a bit off the beaten track, and that's kind of also part of our ethos. We'll spend a few nights there before heading back to Athens and rounding up the program there. So let's get into the day by itinerary. As I mentioned, we're going to start in Chania. You can fly to Athens by any number of routes. In fact, there is a direct service between Toronto and Athens. From other cities in Canada, you either fly into Athens and on from there, or you can use a connecting flight through any of the major hubs in Europe. And some of them, in fact, you can go directly into Chania. But in any event, we begin our journey there on the first day as usual. As soon as you arrive in, you'll be really quite taken aback. This is a great picture because this is the lighthouse that is at the entrance to the 14th century Venetian harbor, which is the hallmark of this lovely, lovely city, which is the second largest city in Crete. And it doesn't have the glitz and glamour that Heraklion does. And I think that's why it makes for a very authentic experience. You'll find all of the classic trademarks of a small Greek town with the narrow, the winding streets, all the landmarks, the boutiques, the shopping is absolutely lovely. And so we'll spend 3 nights in here. And on our first day, of course, we're going to meet up with our local guide. We have some wonderful, wonderful folks that we work with in Crete who coordinate all of our time there, and they are very passionate about showing us their home and really getting to this history about the history of the Venetians, but also the Ottomans, the Renaissance heritage of the city. And we'll see these little districts, Topana, Splantia, Colombo, that are all like little parts of the town, each of which has its own character and emblematic of these different eras, these different peoples that lived in Crete and specifically in Chania. And of course, food is a big part of this trip. It's a big part of all of our trips, and not just because we're going to eat our 2 meals a day or 3 meals as the case may be, but because of the places that we choose to do that. And we're going to start right off by having a cooking class right away, second day at a local family home. They grow the ingredients in their own garden. They prepare some of the baked goods into a wood-fired oven. They have their own wines from the region, from the island of Crete. How many Cretan wines have you had recently? Probably not much. Greek wines not hugely on the repertoire of most Canadians. And we'll learn a little bit about also some of the weaving techniques and some of the other handicrafts that they produce in this part of Crete. And our journey will continue on the next day with more food. We were quipping the other day that we don't offer food tours per se, but some of our members comment to me. They said every one of your tours is a food tour because, first of all, it's such an important aspect of local culture to smell, taste, learn about, understand the local cuisine and the influences that it's had, but also because we just like to eat. And so we're going to do a little gastronomic tour in a little town called Apocoranas. We'll meet some of the local producers that produce the olive oil, the cheese, the honey, and really get to experience how all of these ingredients are assembled in Crete, a very unique way. I mean, obviously you'll see the classic Greek foods that you're all familiar with from the Greek restaurants back home, the souvlakis and so on of Greek cuisine that we're familiar with. But there's so many other parts to it that we'll get to know. We'll visit a raki distillery. If you haven't had raki before, maybe you've heard of it. If you visited in Eastern European countries, they call it rakia, as they do as well in other parts of some of the former Soviet countries. This is a very distinctive alcoholic drink. It's kind of like a schnapps, although they call it holy water there. And it's, again, a part of every meal, often drunk at the beginning as a way to stimulate the appetite, so they say. But it's a wonderful experience to see how they make raki. And after all of that, you'll have time to take in the beautiful sunsets and explore and learn a little bit more on your own about what Crete and Chania have to offer. The next day we head off across the island on our way to Heraklion, which is of course the primary city in Crete. On the way there, we're going to stop in at Knossos, and Knossos, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Archaeologically speaking, they refer to it as Europe's oldest city. It's a Minoan civilization, of course, with just the ruins left over, but a very, very important site, perhaps arguably one of the most important sites in all of Greece, and Greece has some pretty important historic sites, so this is a must-do and an ideal stopping point on our journey over to Heraklion. And we'll arrive in the afternoon, and again, you'll get to discover a little bit about this city, and you'll immediately see how it is more touristic. It's a little more glitzy as Greek towns can be, and there'll be time there again to take it all in and have a wonderful dinner at a local restaurant, again sampling Cretan cuisine before we head off the next day and make our way into the nitty-gritty of the Greek islands, beginning of course with Santorini. Santorini is, I think it goes by a lot of monikers, the jewel of the Greek islands. It's certainly the most well-known. Anybody that talks about the Greek islands, I think the name Santorini enters the conversation at one point or another, known for its iconic white houses with their blue roofs, and the steep hillside that's so well pictured here that looks out over to the Mediterranean and to the caldera that's just across the harbor. It is an epic city, and we'll go in. We're going to spend 3 nights and have a chance to just look around, soak it all in. But having 3 nights, because let's face it, the vast majority of visitors to Santorini come in by some form of cruise ship, and generally only spend the day. And some of the nicest times and parts of Santorini are after 5 p.m. when the cruise ships all head out. And you can enjoy it in a little bit more peace, although Santorini, I would say, is never peaceful because it is such a popular spot. So we'll start off our 3-night stay in Santorini with a beautiful dinner at a restaurant overlooking the sunset, and just really taking in this amazing town. Our first full day in Santorini, then we go off on a bit of an exploration on what they call the hidden gems, to check out some of the things that you are beyond the scope of where the cruise ships can go in the limited time that they're there. In particular, we'll visit Fira, which is the capital. It has incredible views of the caldera. There's a volcano that's just across the harbor. In fact, on the free day there, you can go and take a boat cruise around it, or you can actually visit the island itself. And we'll also head up to Oya, the highest point on the island, where you have some amazing views out to the surrounding Mediterranean, the sunsets, and again, lots of time. We'll have a lunch in Oya, and you'll have plenty of time to just sort of explore on your own. The time in Santorini is only 3 nights, and there's so much. Here's a great shot of Oya that one can do we leave an entire day for your own exploration because you may be somebody that likes the water-based activities. You may want to go out and do a boat cruise and admire Santorini from the no matter which angle you look at Santorini from, whether it's from within or from the sea or from the air, it's pretty magical with its cliffs and again all of these whitewashed buildings. And so what we strongly suggest, because we do include a lot of free time on our trips, and we do that quite intentionally, because everybody has something that will appeal to them. You might be somebody that's interested in museums or galleries. You might be interested in doing some hiking, or as I mentioned, marine activities. You might want to do they take a deeper dive into the wine culture of Santorini, because of course they have their own local wineries there. All of these are possibilities, and all it takes is a little bit of Google searching, and you'll find something that appeals to you. And that's what we strongly suggest doing to take most advantage of the time there in Santorini. So after 3 nights, we'll then continue on and we'll head up to Naxos. So we're heading here from south to north, from Crete, which is in the south, and we'll head up to Santorini and then continuing up to Naxos. So we're heading generally in the direction of the mainland. And we will arrive by Sea Jet's boat, these high-speed catamarans. This is what connects all of the islands. Of course, they have low-speed ones as well, mostly for the cargo and for cars and so on and so forth. And we'll arrive in Naxos. This is the greenest, the lushest of the Cyclades Islands. And as I mentioned, in looking at feedback from the folks that have done this trip with us before, a favorite. They really, really enjoyed it because it doesn't have the pomp and circumstances, if you will, of a Santorini. It's great for its own sake, but Naxos is the one that you can kind of get into that feeling of what Greek culture and the culture on the island is all about. We're going to be staying in Chora, and a great base from which to explore the island. Again, we'll probably head right away. There's lots of iconic sunset photos on a Greek island tour, and particularly here at Portara, where the famous door frame, and in fact, I think that's the next slide. Here you see the Portara Gate that we're going to visit on our full-day tour. And of course, this is, as you can well imagine, with the sun in the west setting, a great spot to take these very cool pictures. If you go to your Instagram and you look for Portara in Naxos, I'm sure you'll find more than a few pictures, maybe even of somebody that you know. And we're going to visit Naxos, touring around the old town, looking at the sights. Of course, this gate, which was Apollo's temple, the entrance to Apollo's temple. We'll also visit a Catholic cathedral that has a very interesting Byzantine icon dating back to the 11th century. There's an archaeological exhibition, in the Ursuline School that will give us a bit of insight into the history, the traditions, how Naxos became to be a place that is as populated as it is, and you get a sense of it by looking at this photograph. These islands are quite well populated. They still have lots of open areas. There's a lot of agriculture that goes on there, and we'll get a bit of a taste of that at our first dinner in Naxos, where we've selected a restaurant that epitomizes the cuisine that is specific to the island. We will then have a full free day in Naxos, and once again, we cherish the free days because there's so many things that you can do. Whether you're on our trip in April or on your trip in September, you can visit one of the island's beautiful and pristine beaches. There are a number of iconic spots to visit around the island. There's a whole bunch of different excursions that one can choose to book locally. I'm not one to sort of be flogging all manner of excursions to make a few dollars extra. There's lots of local things to choose from there that, depending on what your flavor is, you might do another cooking class or visit some vineyards or go for a catamaran cruise. They have a very interesting cave along the coast called Rina, which is a favorite spot among visitors to the island. Lots of things to experience, and we've left the whole day at leisure, so you can dine out to your heart's content. We'll take a full day from Naxos visiting the nearby island of Paros, So once again, we'll hop on a catamaran and take and zip by the beautiful coastline, the azure blue waters of not only of Naxos, but as we arrive into Paros. And we'll spend a good part of the day. In fact, we'll spend a full day there. So this is one of those trips you're going to be out and about for the entire day. There is again a terrific Venetian castle there. There's some lovely little villages. It's not a large island. You can get around it. You might even want to sort of rent a bicycle, although it's hilly. Or you could even, in theory, rent a car and explore most of the island easily within a part of a day. The marble quarries at Marathi, of course, Greek marble is quite famous from this part of the world, and yeah, lots to see and do in a relaxing atmosphere. And once again, as I say, we feedback from our members saying we should do a longer stay trip in Paros, and we may one day. But I think one day visit for the purposes of this trip is really perfect. After that, we head back to Naxos for one more night, and then we will head off to our last Greek island that we're going to visit on this tour, an even lesser known spot, yet just as beautiful in its own way as the former two. We're going to be staying near the main city of Hermopoli, which is renowned for neoclassical architecture. So you can already see from this photograph some of the differences compared to the classic Cycladic buildings that you find in Santorini and largely in Naxos. All of a sudden here in Syros, of course, they have some of that, but it's this blend, and you look at the churches because they've got the Greek Orthodox, they've got the Catholic churches there, they've got an Apollo theater, which is kind of like a miniature version of the La Scala Theater in Milan, Italy. Again, a charming town that is a little bit different once again than the ones that we've seen. So we're going to have a nice half-day exploration beginning in Hermopoli itself, the principal city. We're going to visit the medieval fortress town that's pictured here called Anosiros, which has amazingly well-preserved cobblestone streets. And again, a very strong Catholic influence here in comparison to the other islands that we visit along the way. And finally, we're going to spend the end of the day in Kini, a lovely little seaside village with sandy beaches and amazing sunset views once again. The Greek islands are all about sunsets, wine, great food, and that'll be our exploration there. And so one more free day in Syros. And once again, this is what I encourage you to do if you're interested in coming on this trip is do a little bit of Googling around on your own. What is there to do in Syros? And there are a lot of different things. Syros is known for the Vaporia district, which is sort of the posh area of town, high-ceilinged mansions, marble balconies, a very historic charm to the place. There's some amazing art here as well, the Cyclades Art Gallery, which is actually a contemporary art exhibition that you can find here in Hermopolis. And as I mentioned over and over again, the beaches. I mean, even if you're not a beach person, just to pass by them, go on a tour around the island, and the scenes are just remarkable. One is nicer than the other, but I think it's also nice to go, if nothing else, even if you're not a swimming type, but head down to one of the restaurants alongside the beach, watch all the goings on, taste the local Greek, the local Cycladic cuisine, and that will make for an amazing trip. Our last leg will take us back to Athens, of course, the capital city, and it's here we'll check into our hotel for our final night. We'll obviously have a wonderful farewell dinner, as we always do, celebrating the 2 weeks that we will have spent in the Greek islands, and there'll be a little bit of time to go and explore some of the city, at the very least, a chance to zip up to the Parthenon, of course, pictured here, which is Athens and arguably Greece's most famous landmark. For those that are interested in seeing more of Athens, it's a massive, sprawling city. You could certainly tag on a few more days to do a little bit of exploration. And even Athens has its nice beaches and so on in Bouliamenis, which is just a little bit outside the city center. And it is a gateway to so many of the other Greek islands in case you decide you need more and you have to visit Mykonos or Kos or one of the many other ones. It's all possible from Athens as a base. And that'll wrap up our trip, as I say, which will culminate at the end of beginning of May or the end of September, depending on whether you choose May, spring, or fall. And from there, you can make your way back home or perhaps to another stop around your trip around Europe. For this trip that will happen, as I mentioned, in April and September of 2025, all of the details in our main program itinerary that's available, and you'll get a copy of it if you're watching a recording of this webinar. Note here on the pricing that there is a relatively modest upcharge for single rooms. So that's appealing because we know this is something we have a lot of our solo members, maybe you're one of them, who like to travel on their own and have their own room. There are a relatively limited number available simply because of the size of the hotels that we choose. So if you are a solo traveler that's interested in coming along with us to Greece and you would like to have your own room, we suggest that you book as soon as possible. Lots of inclusions, as always. I won't go through these in great detail, but you've got 50 nights accommodation, some amazing meals along the way. We generally do 2 meals a day, breakfast and either lunch or dinner. With the exception of on our free days, and then you're free to sort of go and explore and find something exciting on your own. And the only thing that's left is basically airfare and insurance. We're happy to assist you with both of those, and we are quite adept at organizing air from pretty much any point in Canada. So if you have any questions at all, and I do realize one thing I left out, I mentioned I was going to talk about, which is the weather. It's always a question we get. What's the weather like? Well, it is lovely and mild at both times of the year. With April being a little bit cooler than September, September can still have some quite warm summer days where it can get into the low 30s. April, typically you're going to find the temperature is going to be, anywhere around the mid 20s, plus or minus a few degrees. It could get a little bit warmer, but not usually. So if you are interested in sort of milder climes, and you don't mind that the Mediterranean is obviously cooler in April, it's certainly swimmable at both times of the year. But in April, if you are somebody that's a beachgoer and you want to go swimming, just be prepared that the Mediterranean at that time of the year is probably around sort of 17, 18 degrees centigrade. So it's a little bit cooler, whereas in September, after a long hot summer, the Mediterranean is still quite warm and ideal for bathing. So that's basically it. If you have any other questions, anything you'd like to find out to consider joining this trip, then do drop a note to Paula, give her a call. The best way to reach Paula at the moment is by email, but you can certainly call as well, and we'll make sure that we get all of your questions answered and that you get all excited about this very unique trip, stopping in many of the Greek islands and doing that at a pace that allows you to really understand what it's all about. Thanks for tuning into our webinar today, and I hope we'll see you in the sunny Greek islands.